Hi, I'm Susan Lewis from WRTI. I'm here with Donald Nally. He's the founder and conductor of The Crossing. Hi, Donald.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about your new CD, A Native Hill?
Yes, I can. I'm over the moon about it because the piece is about 70 minutes of unaccompanied singing. Very, very extended piece of music, long, long lines throughout. It was a gift from Gavin Bryars. We were very fortunate that Wendell Berry agreed that Gavin could set texts of his. And it's about our relationship with the earth and the kind of blessings of rural life and the inevitability of our coming and going. And the process was both joyful and challenging. It's a hard piece of music.
Each movement relating to something in the environment.
Yeah, like there's one animals and birds, there's one streams, there's one that talks about a dog going for a walk and how the path and what the dog is thinking, and then there's I don't know, it's just beautiful metaphors. The last movement is just it's some of the best music I know, frankly. The last movement, the last 5 minutes of it are unbelievable to sing, and it's about like thinking about yourself as a thing that, just like leaves, is going to become part of the humus of the understory, and then literally Wendell Berry says, I am at peace with that and I accept it. And Gavin wrote it at a time of tragedy in his life. His daughter was pregnant with a coming grandchild of Gavin's, obviously, and her partner died in the middle of the writing. Well, right at the beginning of the writing, actually. And it profoundly affected the piece. I could talk forever about it because I just feel so fortunate that we had the opportunity to do it, and now it's out there. And I think it's, dare I say, I think it's pretty good. So
I've been listening to it. It's really beautiful, and I
thanks.
actually listened to it once when I was walking my dog, and it was this was recorded in 2019, right?
Yeah, October.
But yet it seems like something in the way it talks about and expresses our relationship with the natural world. It seems like something that is very appropriate to healing us now.
Yeah, well, and it's also, Gavin knows us really well, and he knew this would really, really appeal to me because the previous thing that we had done together was Thomas Traherne, and Thomas Traherne's writings are also very much about like how God is in nature, and you're lying under a tree and you look up through it and you see the sunlight. That's God. So it is in line with a number of other works that are coming up that have to do with the environment, farming. We're doing a huge piece by Ted Hearn 2 years from now in a farmed field in the middle of the summer. I want the audience to be able to smell the smells of farming and to hear the bugs that make the pollen or pollinate the plants and make our food for us, and to be able to touch the plants that that make our food for the miracle of sun, soil, and water, and how that becomes the things that we eat.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in rural Upper Bucks County, but pretty rural Upper Bucks County, and so this is very I wouldn't say coming home to me, but it's a very important part of what formed me, put it that way. And my sister and her husband were dairy farmers for many years. So it's we didn't grow up on a farm, but surrounded by them.
But what do you think sensitivity to the outdoors does for us? I mean, what connection, or feeling that connection, really realizing that connection, as you say, being able to smell the smells of the outside, what does that do Was that involved? Were those ideas involved in the way you approached this with the choir, the crossing?
Yeah, I mean, I carry a lot of personal stories into the rehearsal process. Just how I find my way into music and how I find my way into my understanding of pieces. And, I think that conductors, like actors, need to be observing people and trying to figure out like what makes people do what they do and think what they do and think what they think. I know what it does for me. There's a melancholy thing that being in nature can produce, or often produces, right? It's both, it's that weird thing about joy and sadness happening at the same time. There's this awesome poem by A.R. Ammons called Guide that like talks about that. That's just such a great poem. And there's this thing that happens that can be a kind of melancholy, but not a morose kind of melancholy. And for me, that melancholy is like the understanding of like the oneness of everything. And it sound like, I know I sound like a hippie, but like we are all made of stardust and all that stuff. And how there's both an isolation that happens about it, and there's the smallness of just this like my tiny little life that is so important to me, and it's so me centric, and yet it's a blip. This doesn't matter. I like making pieces about that, because like it can be about agriculture, or it can be about food sovereignty, or who are the people who actually make our food or pick our food, and what are their lives like. But it also has an element of just what nature, just who we are in nature, and I could go on and on about, I'm not going to preach to you, but about just, what our curatorial responsibility is, and whether or not we're actually owning that, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not an educator in that way. And I don't want my art to be educational. I do teach students at Northwestern. I love that. But, my art isn't there to educate people. It's just to tell stories. And hopefully that by describing and defining the world that we live in, people will see themselves, and there's a connection that we make, right? They feel a connection.
Right. And you mentioned the last movement, at peace, being kind of the would you say that's kind of the culmination of all of these feelings of both because there's discord, but there's also resolution in that.
Absolutely. So that piece starts out kind of like everybody who writes about this moment, because it starts out with a 24 voice chord. So I mean, of course there aren't 24 different, if you're using just a standard Western tonal scale, there aren't 24 pitches. So some of them are obviously doubled, but through the range, of course, there's 24 singers singing 24 different pitches through the use of range. And that dissolves to C major. And it's kind of shocking and beautiful, like stunning. And it kind of like that last movement kind of wanders a bit. And then there's this point where the tenors and altos sing, they sing, "It is acceptable," and there's this little tiny note that Gavin added to it. They go, "Acceptable to me," and then they're answered by like another part of the choir saying, "Acceptable," and then the palette kind of goes into this almost mystical background of harmony, and you can literally feel the sky opening. Like, music is amazing. Music is amazing, and the people who write it are amazing, right? It's just like, how does that happen through just sound?
Right. And you and I have talked also about just the power, the emotional power and the emotional resonance of voices singing, especially the way the members of the crossing do. It's just so wonderful to listen to you all.
Thanks.
So thanks so much, Donald, for sharing your thoughts about all of these things with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I can't say what a pleasure it is. I really appreciate your investment time wise and also in our art, because clearly you listen, and that means a lot.
Well, thanks a lot.